Good morning, River family. So excited to be with you again today. I'm Pastor Isaiah. This is my brother Luke. Today we're excited to dig into the Word a little more.
Yes, as Pastor Zay introduced on Sunday, we're looking at the story of Joesph and how it plays its own part in the story and the narrative of Scripture, but also kind of represents the story of Scripture in and of itself. And today we're going to dive a little bit deeper into his dreams.
Yeah, so I love how the story starts with dreaming, right? Joesph has dreams. He's been given a special position by his father, and then he gets these dreams. And I think I always wrestle with, I'm not sure if God intended these dreams to be shared, at least maybe not right away, or maybe not in the way that Joesph did. But I also see the reality that like Joesph only knew being favored. Like he wasn't trained in how to be humble or put others before him as far as his family goes, right? He was the favored. He was the number one son in his dad's eyes. And I do think there's a beauty in that like that is how God looks at us. Like we're seen as the favorite, every single one of us, because God can do that. Get to be the favorite, right, and find favor. And so I think when he saw this dream of like, oh, I'm going to be elevated, like people are going to bow to me. I don't think he saw it as a prideful thing of like, haha, you're going to bow to me, brothers, but was like excited to share like God showed me something. And obviously I also understand as a brother, right, like if my younger brother just showed up one day and was like, just so you know, God told me you're going to bow to me later. Like, even if that was said in a nice way and said really well, I probably wouldn't receive it well, especially when I was a teenager, right? And we're talking about teenage guys here. And so there's a reality that there was already issues with the fact that Joesph was favorite when he shouldn't be the favorite as far as like he wasn't the firstborn. But then the way that these dreams are received is very negative. And I think that speaks to sometimes what reality is, although that's not necessarily what God intends when he gives us dreams or visions of our future.
Yeah, right. The cool thing about these narratives, these stories, these families in Scripture is that they're not the fathers of righteousness. They're the fathers of faith. And so they represent real family things. And there's a cool way that this story kind of fleshes out family dynamics in a way that God is intervening in a real situation. You know, these aren't superheroes. This is a normal family, and
they had issues.
Some mayhem kind of results from some of this, but God is faithful through it.
Right. So the main point I want to make today is that like God gives us dreams or vision, or he, uses Scripture to highlight a calling in your life or whatever it is. And sometimes like our circumstances, our reality does not line up with that at all, right? Like although Joesph was favored, he was not being bowed to. He was not in charge. And especially when he shares with his dad, even the sun and moon, and his father's like, "You think I'm going to bow to you?" Right? Like he's like, "You should know your place." Right? And again, with a real family, you understand this, but Joesph, I think, was really excited about what God was showing him, and then it was kind of shot down. And obviously his circumstances got continually worse for a while, and then a little better, and then worse again, and then a little, and then worse again. And it's like, I think the point of God giving him to that so early was that it could carry him. He could remind him of that. Like when Joesph is crying out to God in prison or in the pit, God be like, hey, remember the dreams. Like you're going to be in a position of power and authority. And like this is just part of the journey. This is just a chapter in the story. The story isn't over yet.
Yeah, I think the dreams were forward-looking in the way that it can nurture Joesph in the midst of his life and his trials and all that. But they also serve, when God gives us a word at the beginning of our journey, it serves as a way to remember at the end. Mm-hmm. And be like, so it wasn't you. Like God knew this whole along, and you can see his faithfulness. You can see that God did it. Like he gets the glory in it all, but you get to experience his faithfulness. Yeah. That he did what he said he would do.
So, what is a word God's given you? Whether it's a prophetic word, a logos word, whether it was a dream you had when you were 5 years old and you can't, it's a God dream, so you can't really get rid of it. It's there of like, oh, I saw myself leading people, or you're running a school or writing a book. Like, what things has he placed in your heart that maybe your circumstances don't line up with now, or maybe it was shot down so much that you gave up on it, that like you can now reconnect to God and be like, hey, I'm really excited to see you faithful in this. Like, what's a step I can take towards it? Or what's a way that I can honor you for this dream you gave me, so that when it does come true, I can look back and remember all that you've done along the way.